The Lightning Thief series was no doubt one of the best young adult fantasy series when growing up. The first book, The Lightning Thief, came out in 2005, and The Last Olympian, the final book of the series, came out in 2009, basically meaning everyone I knew growing up was reading this series at some point. And we'd all discuss which cabin we thought we'd fit into. I remember I was like, oh, I'd be in Hades because I always felt like I was dark and edgy and shit like that. And most people were like, oh, I want to be Ares because they're war, or Athena because they're smart. Anyways, it was a big deal. Everybody talked about it all the time. What this means is that in 2010, when the movie got announced starring Logan Lerman, this was a huge deal. We were all so excited. We were like, oh my gosh, this is one of the best things we've ever heard. We all went to see it opening day. It was a huge deal, and well, it was definitely a movie.
Know your fucking place, trash.
Don't get me wrong, there was definitely some fun moments overall in the movie. But we kind of left feeling like not satisfied with what came out. It was so different from the original book that it was hard to even say this was a Percy Jackson movie. So when the TV show got announced and that it'd be coming out in 2023, my friends and I, we were so excited once again. That nostalgia feeling we got sort of rose back up. Group chats were firing on all cylinders. It was a big deal. So the show came out. The series finale just played a couple weeks ago, and my final thoughts are, meh. I enjoyed it, don't get me wrong, but I was led to believe it was going to be more identical to the book. And that was kind of the interpretation I felt a lot of people felt. And there's nothing wrong with changing things from the book that don't adapt as well from the original source material. It was good, but it wasn't identical. And there was also a musical, but like, nobody gives a shit about that, so we don't even have to talk about that. Let's start with the TV show and the book, because they're the most similar. We're going to run through the overall plot first, just so everyone's caught up. And also, yeah, I reread the book for this video. And yeah, so what? It's a 350-page children's story and I read it. It's a big deal. I can read. I'll read for a video. Let's do it. So, before we get into anything though, anyone who complained about Annabeth being played by an African-American actress, please shut the fuck up and leave. I don't really care. Leah Jeffries did an amazing job as Annabeth, and that's not really one of the concerns. Let's start this thing off. So, plot time. Percy Jackson is a troubled kid. He's never made it a whole year at any school, and he's always been different. He suffers from ADHD and dyslexia. Right away, this is a fantastic thing. It's in the book and it's in the show, but I thought it's worth bringing up. It just immediately makes him feel like a relatable character, kind of any kid who's kind of feeling misunderstood or left down. You know, it's kind of just like, I don't know, you can kind of see yourself in Percy when you're reading the book. Guy or girl, it doesn't matter, it could apply to anybody. Not to mention, the opening narration snaps. You're right in there right off the bat.
If you think you might be one of us, turn away while you still can.
It had my attention as a kid because it's pretty much verbatim from the book, and it still did now. Walker Scobell, excellent work. Percy Jackson and his best friend Grover are off on a class trip to a Greek mythology exhibit in a museum. On this trip, Nancy, Percy's bully, is harassing Grover and Percy the entire time, till eventually he snaps, and he feels this pulling in his gut, and it yanks Nancy into the water fountain. After Percy shoves Nancy, Miss Dodds was not very happy with this, and she responds by transforming into a furry.
I don't know what this is, but it's kind of hot.
Furry. Fury. A fury. Not a furry. She was not transforming into a furry. A fury. And she's asking Percy, where is it? And he responds by killing her with the magical pen he previously got from Mr. Brunner, his teacher. So this is kind of where my first real problem with the show comes in, and it's a pretty prevalent thing throughout the entire show, is it just feels so rushed. It's like Nancy gets shoved in the water, Miss Dodds turns into a fury, and he kills her almost immediately. There's no build-up, there's no chase kind of like there was in the book, there's no like scared, you don't even have time to react, and all of a sudden she's dead already. It just feels like they kind of are unveiling it a little too fast, or a little like, I feel like they're just jumping a gun a little bit, not letting it develop. And you kind of feel this rushed feeling throughout the entire show. I've never understood this being a problem in a streaming platform-based show. Originally, shows were made, you'd have a 30 to 60 minute time slot, and your show had to fit within that block, and that was all the time you got. For this show was made by Disney Plus, and it's only shown on Disney Plus. So why couldn't, instead of making the episodes 30 minutes, they could have just made them all 45 minutes, or whatever the time was. And then they don't have to worry about rushing the story as much. That was never a problem. We'd never complain about longer episodes. And so it would have been, I don't know, it would have been able to fit everything they wanted in there, and it would have been great. Character relationships would have been developed, and I think that would kind of solve the overall problem. After he kills the Fury, he's kind of confused why no one's reacting. Grover and Mr. Brunner start gaslighting him into thinking, no, there was never a Miss Dodds. There was this teacher, a completely different teacher that Percy's never seen before, but everyone's reacting to her like she's been the teacher the entire time. Now he thinks he's going crazy.
Are you crazy? Are you out of your mind?
He got expelled for pushing Nancy into the fountain because Grover lies to the principal about this occurring. So his mom decides, hey, Percy, it's time to go on a little vacation. They take Gabe's car, and Gabe is Percy's stepdad, who in the show really isn't that bad. He's just kind of lazy, sports bet, he seems like a chill kind of guy. He's not exactly the nicest person to Percy, but he's not like, I would say, murder-worthy. And the reason why I say murder-worthy is because at the end of this show, he does get murdered. Spoiler alert, I know. I feel like you gotta make him really unlikable. He's supposed to be a super despicable character who you hate the entire duration of the show. But that's okay. They convinced Gabe to let them take their car to go on a family vacation because Percy needs to clear his head. On this vacation, Grover shows up in the middle of the night. And this is when the exposition dump starts happening. And this is also kind of when I say that rushed feeling you get, this is where it happens. Grover teaches us about the mist, which is why none of the mortals knew who Miss Dodds was and why Grover had to gaslight Percy into thinking it didn't happen. Grover reveals that he's a satyr, which Percy barely even reacts to. Percy is also a demigod, and they're being hunted, and he needs to go to camp, and it's just like a lot. It's just a lot of information gets revealed right away. It's just and. It just is non-stop. And while that's all happening, they're being chased by a minotaur. The minotaur catches up to the car, flips the car, whatever, they escape, they're running away. The minotaur catches Sally, kills her. And then Percy gets mad, uses the magical pen, kills the minotaur with its own horn, and then passes out. Percy wakes up injured but alive in Camp Half-Blood, which is essentially the safe haven for all demigods, which are half gods, half humans, if you didn't know. Because Percy hasn't been claimed by his godly parent, he is placed into the Hermes cabin, and he meets Luke, who is the head of the Hermes cabin, as well as one of the first people that's ever been nice to him in a new area. So they kind of start bonding, and Percy kind of follows him around, and they kind of hang out, which is great. So we get some exposition about each of the 12 cabins. There's Hermes, Aphrodite, Ares. There's all the main gods of Olympus. They have cabins. We also learn 3 cabins that don't have people in them. There's Zeus's, Hera, and Poseidon. Well, Hera doesn't have demigod children because she's married to Zeus, which, she's like the only one that stays loyal to that. Poseidon, Zeus, and Hades made an agreement of the big 3 that they would no longer sire children. So that's why those 2 cabins are empty. Hades doesn't have a seat on Olympus, therefore he doesn't have a cabin. Lots of exposition, but I figured I might as well just share it now. After learning all this information, it kind of fast forwards to nighttime, where Percy is sort of abducted by a bunch of the Ares kids who are looking to frosh him. And they lead him into the bathrooms, they put his head near the toilet, and he feels this pulling in his gut. The same feeling he felt at the fountain, and surges of water shoot through. They splash the entire Ares cabin. He's the only person dry in the entire bathroom, and this is almost identical to as it is in the book. Very well done. This was a fantastic scene. After this, Annabeth reveals herself, and she says she wants Percy on her team for Capture the Flag. So you're like, ooh, she must have a great plan. But Percy's basically just used in bait and Capture the Flag. Clarice and her goons go after him because he embarrassed them last night, and while that happens, Luke takes the flag and escapes into the blue side, winning Capture the Flag. Woo! Annabeth and Percy get into a little kerfuffle. Annabeth pushes Percy into the water. A giant trident appears above Percy and reveals his father is Poseidon, one of the big 3. This is a big deal because obviously Poseidon's not supposed to have any children. The books did Capture the Flag way better, in my opinion. The Capture the Flag is basically the same, minus Percy flossing. I guess he's 12, so leave it in there. But this is going to date the show so much, but that's okay. After all this unfolds, before he's revealed to be Poseidon's son, a hellhound, which is basically a giant beast from the underworld, shows itself in camp, which monsters aren't supposed to be able to get into, and it forces Percy into the river, where Chiron saves him, who's like the giant teacher, who's actually Mr. Brunner. There's a lot of information coming at you guys. I hope you're keeping up. When he gets pushed into the river, Poseidon then claims him. And this is sort of a big deal, because this lets everyone know Percy's not even safe in camp, and it's the reason Mr. Brunner / Chiron lets him go on the quest in the first place. He knows that if Percy's not safe at camp, he has to go on here. He has to get underway. And the quest is this. Zeus's lightning bolt has been stolen, and Zeus thinks Poseidon has stolen it from him. Gods can't steal each other's weapons, but demigods can. So this is kind of like the situation that's going on. These are the stakes. So Percy, Annabeth, and Grover must get it back. But the main reason why Percy accepts the quest is because when the Minotaur killed his mom, it was revealed that she was actually captured by the Minotaur, not killed. They go on the quest and nothing too crazy happens. They fight some monsters, they meet Medusa, easily kill Medusa, and they send her head to Olympus. They catch a train, find out they're being tracked by Echnida, who's like the mother of monsters, and she releases the Chimera on them, and they flee by going to the St. Louis Arch, which is an Athenian safe haven, which isn't really mentioned in the book because the book just sort of says Annabeth wants to go there. So I kind of see that's a fair change. I kind of see why they did it, but also it's like potato, you can kind of do it either way. And this is honestly one of the best parts of the show. Percy feels actually weak and almost human, which I know he's a demigod, so saying that, but it makes him feel a little more relatable. The monster is absolutely like clapping his cheeks, metaphorically, of course. His only option is either fight the Chimera and die or let go of the arch and fall. This is where the famous "I thought it was closer" tweet from Rick Riordan came from. In the show, they just made the river like come up and catch Percy and drag him into the water. This is also where Percy learns he can breathe underwater, and he meets a nymph, not a nympho. Nympho is very different. He did not meet a nymph. Well, maybe she probably will. Anyway, okay, so yeah. She tells him that his father is waiting for him off the west coast in Santa Monica Pier. In the book, she never says it's his father. Small detail, but it kind of makes sense later on why it actually ends up being a big detail, but we'll get to that later. Him and his friends start making their way west. While walking down the highway, Ares, on a motorbike, catches up to them and takes them to a diner to have some food.
Lambs, Chris. I'm a fucking god of war.
And he makes them a mini quest to do on their quest. He'll give them a ride west if they retrieve his shield from the water park. Now, obviously they accept this, but this is where the book and the TV show go actually in very different directions. I'm kind of convinced for when they were writing the TV show, they didn't want Annabeth to seem weak or too reliant on Percy, which is kind of fine, but it also kind of goes against what kind of makes Percy and Annabeth's relationship so fun. In the books, they're always helping each other rather than Percy always being saved by Annabeth. For the TV show, they go into the water park and go into the Tunnel of Love, kind of forcing that Percy Beth. You know what I'm saying? Is it Percy Beth or Percabeth? Either way, that relationship is slowly forming. They have a nice boat ride, and then they see the shield and some statues. The only way they can get the shields is if Percy sacrifices himself. So Percy goes to sacrifice himself. We all know Percy dies. Like, obviously he's going to die in episode 4. Annabeth convinces Hephaestus, the literal god of, like, the forge, to let Percy go. And so he does. Oh yeah, I guess I didn't really mention, Grover stayed back the entire time in the show talking with Ares, and they kind of were flicking back and forth between it. Not really super important, but like, I guess Grover manipulates Ares in the show. Anyways, it's kind of like arbitrary stakes, and I don't know why they really did it. And yeah, I know what you're gonna say. Like, obviously, the main character is not gonna die at like really any point in the show. We all know he'll make it out. I feel like you can still make him feel endangered and like developing, rather than just, oh my gosh, he sacrificed himself. Oh my gosh, he was saved. Why even make the sacrifice in the first point? And so I'll bring up how the book did this, and I think it did it better. They go to the water park, and they see Ares' shield in the bottom of a pool. The pool's empty, it's complete, like it's dried, there's no water in there. So Percy just rashly goes into the pool. And Annabeth follows, Grover stays up top. And Percy just grabs the shield. All of a sudden, celestial bronze wires cross above the pool, like they can't get out. The sides are so slippery they can't climb out. And spiders start coming out of the floor. So Percy's rash actions caused Annabeth and him to get in a trap. But Annabeth's terrified of spiders, and you kind of get this funny, almost comedic, serious moment between Annabeth and Percy when he's like confused why she's losing his mind because these mechanical spiders start getting all over them and like slowing them down and not letting them escape. So Percy ends up having to summon a tidal wave of water from the pool pipes to launch them on a huge wave out. And Grover uses his magical shoes that Luke gave Percy earlier on, and Grover catches them in the air and they all kind of tumble. And it's kind of a fun little bonding moment. So it was a trap made by Hephaestus to catch Ares and Aphrodite banging in the pool and looking like fools on Olympus. So it kind of creates that funny moment because Ares knows it's a trap. It fuels Percy's hatred towards Ares and that kind of butting heads they have throughout the entire series. It works. It works so well. They have the shield, they get it in both, and they return it to Ares. Ares offers them a ride in the back of a truck that's heading west. And this was another weird detail I thought they cut out. Percy can talk to horses because he's a son of Poseidon, and Poseidon created horses from the waves. It's not mentioned in the show at all, but in the back of the truck, Percy talks to a zebra. They free the zebra, which they free the animals in the show, but I don't know why they decided not to make Percy able to talk to the zebra. Minor detail, but I just thought it was kind of interesting. Truck drops them off in Vegas. And this is also a part where I don't like this changed personally. Ares tells them to look for Hermes in the Lotus Casino because he likes to gamble there. Because Hermes can give them a ride that'll instantly get them to the Santa Monica Pier. But in the book, they just kind of wander into the Lotus Casino and they think it's a trap, but they're kind of on the run and they're exhausted. And they realize the guy offering them an invitation in is just a normal human, so they feel safe and go inside. The book does this scene so much better. They walk into the Lotus Casino. in the show, and they're like, this is the Lotus Casino.
Forgot everything that was important to them.
The lotus flowers.
They're going to try and make us stay here forever. Suspense taken. There's no like montage like there is in the book of them like going on rides, playing games, eating food, spending unlimited money, like all this stuff. There's none of that. It is just, we know we're in here. We got to find Hermes and get out. So they find Hermes, have a little conversation with him, pickpocket Hermes somehow. Annabeth steals Hermes' keys and steal his taxi. The most intense part of this episode was Percy driving a taxi. Why did they do that? It made no sense. The book was so much better. You kind of had this weird feeling in your stomach because the kids are having so much fun and everything seems so good. But you're like, okay, they can't just have fun. Something's going to happen. And then Percy starts like talking to some people and this one guy thinks it's 1977. So now you're like, okay, whoa. What the hell happened here? Some guy's in here from 40 years ago, and he has no clue what's going on. So then Percy starts piecing it together, and then he wakes them all up, and they escape. And when they escape, it is like 24 hours till the solstice. Their deadline hits. Whereas in the show, when they escape, it is past the deadline, which immediately discredits Zeus's deadline. It just kind of felt weird why they changed them, why they made them miss the deadline. I think they should have just left the deadline as what it was, and then that way, it just would have worked. Why did they feel the need to pass the deadline? I feel like I'm complaining about this and I didn't explain it properly, but for those who know, you know what I'm talking about. Why would they change the deadline? It makes zero sense. The one thing I did enjoy in this episode specifically was that it really started to lean heavy into Grover's searcher's license. It's a big part of the books that Grover really wants to search for the lost god Pan, who's like the satyr's god pretty much. And so it starts developing that, which I'm pretty excited for because it means further on in the series we'll definitely have that component of it. Percy wades into Santa Monica Pier and meets another nympho. A nymph, not a nympho, a nymph. And she explains to him in the show that Poseidon could no longer wait and he's off to war because they missed the deadline I talked about previously. In the show, she's just there trying to offer him help. The nymph gives Percy 4 pearls, which allow Percy and his friends to step on them and they'll rise them up to the surface, basically saving them from the underworld. But in the book, she gives them 3. I'll bring this up later, but this bothers me so much. Anyways, the kids learn of a secret entrance to the underworld through a place called Krusty's. They changed this so much. In the book, the entrance to the underworld they get from Medusa's lair. They get to meet Charon and they do all that fun stuff. But in this, they go to Krusty's, which is supposed to be a trap for the kids in the book. They're not supposed to know who he is, but they immediately outsmart him and push him onto a bed and trap him or whatever it is. They don't decapitate him, which I'm so sad about. I wanted Percy to cut some heads, make some heads roll, but that's okay. And they go into the underworld. I don't know why they make the kids just know everything. I was going to say they make them like they're gods, but I guess they are literally gods. So they're in the underworld, and Cerberus attacks them, literally eating Grover. But Grover does not die. But he loses a pearl. What? Why? Why make that happen? This is why it bothers me. It was like they're trying to subvert expectations in the one episode, and then the next episode they're like, actually, we're going to stick to the book. So why even give them 4 pearls in the first place? It doesn't really make sense. It didn't add anything to the story other than one line of dialogue where Grover's like, I lost a pearl. And then they're like, oh no, who are we going to leave behind to save your mom? And it just kind of feels forced. So, redundant, unnecessary, waste of time. This is when things are actually significantly different in the underworld compared to the book and the show. We'll go through the book first because I love the book's interpretation of it. They're going through the underworld and they see the different layers of the underworld because there's like the fields of torture, Asphodel, which is just kind of where normal people go, and Elysium, where the heroes go, and it's kind of cool how you see it all up. Basically, they're walking through this until Grover's shoes that he got from Luke, that Percy was supposed to be wearing, get activated and start dragging him to Tartarus, where they save them. Instead, the kids wander through a forest where they encounter these people that cannot hear and, they can't hear and they're bound by regret.
Those here are bound by regret, haunted by choices they made in life.
Annabeth starts getting turned into one of these weird people that's like half tree, and she has to use her pearl and eject early. What does she regret is never explained. Also, why does Grover not get turned into a tree? I haven't touched on it because it's not super relevant to this book's story. But Grover's biggest regret is that he let Thalia die, who he was trying to save a couple years ago when he first brought Annabeth to camp. And he doesn't get turned into a tree. I guess it's because he's a satyr, but it's really never explained or touched on. I don't know why they felt the need to add this, and then also why Annabeth used a pearl and left early. Like, it doesn't really make sense. Grover also gets almost dragged to Tartarus. Percy saves him one-on-one. It's revealed Percy has the lightning bolt in his bag because his bag gets all heavy, and they go and see Hades anyways. Basically what happened, Ares gave Percy a backpack. In that backpack, it had a little spell on it that when he got close enough to Hades' palace, or the entrance to Tartarus, it would activate and summon the lightning bolt into his backpack. Ares was trying to trick Percy into starting a war between the gods, and Percy now realizes this. Percy still needs to go to Hades to save his mother. Without Annabeth, because she pulled away, Percy and Grover go to meet Hades, and this is another big problem I have with the show. In the book, Hades is 10 feet tall, and it describes him as he's radiating power, and the show Hades did not feel like this, nor was he 10 feet tall. I felt like the show did a disservice to the gods overall. They just kind of make them seem like regular guys rather than actual gods. Like, you're supposed to look at a god and be like, I'm not gonna fuck with this person. They're doing their own thing. Like, I'm just gonna try and skid around them. And even though Percy's disrespectful towards them, he still kind of has that fear in him. When he talks to Ares, he feels an uncontrollable rage from Ares' presence. From Hades, he gets a feeling of fear and that he should be obeying him, which he has to fight deep within him. And that's never even touched in the show. One other thing, in the book, Hades literally tells Percy, I wrote it down because it's so badass, return my helm now, or I will stop death. That is my counter proposal. I will open the earth and have the dead pour back into the world. I'll make your lands a nightmare, and you, Percy Jackson, your skeleton will lead my army out of Hades. Which is such a badass and intimidating thing to say. You immediately know Hades isn't fucking around, and it is a big deal. And I guess I should now mention, Hades' helm also got stolen. It's the first time we really hear of it because the main priority is of Zeus's lightning bolt. So we learn, if Percy brings back Hades' helm of darkness, he will return his mother to him. In the show, Hades' palace does look super badass. It doesn't look like it does in the books, but I think they did such a good job with it, and I absolutely loved it, so I have absolutely no complaints there. Huge prompts to the CGI and animation team. And now this is when Percy's big sacrifice happens, is he learns that because there's only 2 pearls, and that Hades needs the helm to release Sally, that he uses the pearls and does not save his mother, which is a huge sacrifice he has to make. And so him and Grover and Annabeth all return to the surface in the book, and in the show, Annabeth's already waiting for them, but Grover and Percy return to the surface. And while they're at the surface, Ares is waiting for Percy. Percy was never supposed to make it out of the underworld, but Ares is there waiting for him nonetheless. Feeling this uncontrollable rage, Percy challenges Ares to a one-on-one battle where if Percy wins, he keeps the helm and the lightning bolt, and it's to first blood. And I guess Ares interprets that as killing Percy, and Percy interprets that as cutting. In the show, it's a pretty average fight, nothing crazy, but eventually Percy summons a pretty dope tidal wave, knocking Ares over, does a little and slices him open, revealing gold blood dripping down him, which is like the blood of the gods. In the book, it's so sick. It's this huge spectacle. There's cops, there's onlookers, Ares summons a wall of fire, and the whole time the Furies are circling overhead, watching this all unfold. Ares starts monologuing to Percy about how he stole the lightning bolt and he stole the helm and it was all his plan and blah, 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 blah. And Percy eventually defeats him. Similar way, summons a huge tidal wave, does a little riposte, and slices him in the heel.
The more you fuck around, the more you're gonna find out.
Basically what this means is the Furies that were listening realize Percy didn't steal the helm or the lightning bolt. Percy gets the helm from Ares because he held on to it and returns it to the Furies, and they take it back down to Hades. Percy keeps the lightning bolt, and he also makes a huge enemy out of Ares, who disappears in a godly fire. Now that Percy has the lightning bolt and the deadline has passed in the show, it has not passed in the books, he returns to New York and gives Zeus his lightning bolt and explained what happened. I haven't really addressed this, but it kind of feels like the entire show, Percy knows Kronos is pulling the strings behind the scenes. So he tries to convince Zeus to listen to him, but Zeus gets mad, almost striking down Percy, but Poseidon surrenders in the war. And then Percy leaves. So, yeah, I guess it occurs again. I don't really know why they made the deadline pass just to have a war that never even happens, just to have Poseidon surrender, when in the first place they could have just had the deadline worked up to Percy returns the lightning bolt, and then they just have like the exact same conversation about how Percy thinks Kronos is coming alive, and then Zeus can get all pissed and leave. I don't know why they didn't do it like that, But in the book, Percy kind of has a feeling it might be Kronos. There's this weird figure he keeps seeing in his dreams. He thinks is pulling the strings, but like he thinks he's dead. Like the whole time you're kind of guessing who it is specifically. And then eventually he talks to his dad about who he thinks is in the pit of Tartarus that was calling to him. And his dad's like, it's my father, Kronos. And it's kind of an epic moment. You're like, holy shit, there's another big bad. I just don't know why they left it out. Like, I understand this show is made for kids, but I feel like the writers don't give 14-year-olds enough credit to follow a story and being left to wonder and try and figure out things. Like, you don't have to explicitly tell the audience everything that's going on the entire time in a TV show. You can leave in a couple episodes where they don't really know what's happening, and then eventually they solve it. It makes it so much more satisfying for us and everybody involved. After kind of saving the world, Percy returns to camp. Quest complete, problem solved. So his good buddy Luke invites him out for some drinks on the beach on the last day of their summer camp. And another complaint. Percy immediately knows Luke gave him the cursed shoes, did all this stuff, who pulled the strings the whole time. And like in the book, if you're reading it as an adult, obviously you're like, oh, Luke was the one who did it. Because when I read the book, I was like, this is so clear. How did I know this as a child? When you're a child reading the book, you don't really piece together that it was Luke that disrupted him the whole time and was kind of wanting him to die and do all that stuff. Because you're like, oh, Luke treats him like such a friend. He gives him all these helpful tools. He trains him one-on-one. But in the show, at the start of the final episode, they have a flashback to where Luke and Percy are training with each other and bantering, and you see all this relationship development at the very end, and you're like, oh yeah, that's going to be a betrayal. Instead of it just happening at the beginning of the show, when it would have just been like felt natural and you kind of would have seen them bonding, that type of thing. Luke-Percy fight was really well done, and I actually really enjoyed it in the show, but I still just think it was kind of, I guess I see why they did it, but it's not really my favorite touch. The story basically ends with Percy ending off at home, and his mother's about to murder Gabe with Medusa's head. This doesn't really feel good because Gabe was just kind of like lazy in the show. In the book, he was like a douchebag, so it was like super satisfying. But in the show, you're just kind of like, oh, he's just like not the most attentive person. Does he really need to be murdered? The one funny thing I really liked at the end of the show was that Percy refers to Kronos as his grandpa, which is just kind of like a funny detail because I think he calls him grandpa in the 5th book, which I'd have to double check, but it's just kind of a fun little thing that they're like, oh yeah, it is his grandfather when you think about it. It's a weird way to look at it, but it's funny as hell. That's basically the quick summary of the entire story, comparing it to the book. The book leaves us guessing and wondering what's going on to happen in each situation, which is such a fun feeling. It leaves us on the edge of our seat the entire time, and it's not rushed. You kind of have these character developments slowly unfold, these fights that are kind of develop, and they kind of have stages, whereas in the show, it's just completely rushed. I hope they kind of learn from this first season and kind of the feedback they're seeing from the audience is that take your time. Make the episodes 10 minutes longer. Do whatever you have to do to kind of slowly, not draw out the story, but have that proper development time, have proper action sequences and stuff like that. It'll make it more engaging overall. I know it's intended for a younger audience. If you make them a little longer, but have these longer action sequences, I think they'll still be equally engaging for the kids as it is for us. We'll end this on a positive note, though. The actors are phenomenal. Like, don't get me wrong, they're like 14, so there's some mediocre acting moments, but like, I think they both, not both, I think all the characters are like really accurately captured by the actors, and they do such a fantastic job. I'm super excited to see this show go on. Hopefully they kind of get those growing pains out early, and so the rest of the seasons are like well-paced, the characters are thriving in the roles, and it's just overall good. You're probably wondering why I left the movie out of this. It's already been like a 25-30 minute video. It's just so different from these two. So now that you have the overall story of the book and the show and what it's supposed to be, and to show you why it's so different, and I don't know why they did it this way. So the movie starts off with Zeus and Poseidon arguing, which is already different from the book. However, Poseidon's in his huge godly form, which is already a step forward ahead of the show because he's like a god. He looks godly. We learn that Zeus thinks Percy stole the lightning bolt and gives him a deadline of 2 weeks.
In 14 days, by midnight on the summer solstice,
or there will be war. Immediately we know the stakes, but it's kind of weird we already know Percy's Poseidon's son. Like, that's not a mystery at all in the movie. Cut to Percy Jackson. He's a troubled kid who has ADHD and dyslexia and struggling in his new school. He goes home and we meet Sally and Gabe. And the one thing I love in the movie is Gabe is actually a piece of shit. He's abusive. He beats on Percy. He beats on Sally, and he's a terrible guy. You immediately hate him. It makes his murder at the end so much better. Percy is off to a class trip to learn about Greek history when Miss Dodds pulls him aside and attacks him, accuses him of stealing the lightning bolt, not the helm, and then Grover and Mr. Brunner save him and she flies away. But in the movie, there's no mist. So Grover and Mr. Bruno are never even trying to gaslight him or acknowledge that the Fury never attacked him. They just go, oh, that definitely happened. We gotta save Percy. But we do get the iconic,
this is a pen. This is a pen.
Percy and Grover grab his mom and flee the city to take him to Camp Half-Blood, where the Minotaur chases him down. Percy makes a classic good one.
Whoa, whoa! You're half donkey?
I'm half goat.
And the Minotaur captures his mom for Hades, and Percy kills him and passes out.
Hey, you're finally awake.
Percy wakes up and has the most relaxed reaction to learning his mom just died.
No, 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 no.
Grover starts showing him around the camp, and the camp honestly feels pretty good, but there's really no grand dramatic reveal that Percy is Poseidon's son. We see him use his powers eventually, but that's not really the same as like, your dad is literally the god of the sea. And there's no really lore about the camp. There's no covering the cabins, covering the gods. So I do like that the show and book both include that, especially the show took the time to show it. This isn't really important to the story. It's just kind of a detail that I noticed when I was rewatching the movie. Grover definitely bangs like a bunch of the daughters of Aphrodite, and the movie just like implies they're all whores. Also, throughout the entire show, Grover is just super horny, which is interesting detail, but like, go off, I guess. Capture the Flag starts, and Luke asks for Percy to be on his team, which is a super nice gesture because Luke's such a great guy. Once the game starts, Percy and Luke start fighting their way through some of the red team's troops, and eventually Luke gets overwhelmed. He tells Percy to run away. Percy runs away, and he sees Annabeth, and they start to fight. They're not on the same team in the movie, but she just absolutely kicks his ass. Poseidon talks to Percy in his mind, and Percy learns that water heals him and gives him power. And like literally the entire camp just watches this happen and like stops playing the game. Like literally 5 guys fight Percy, and Annabeth stands up to him, and then he beats them, and then the rest of the team's just like, whoa, okay, you can take the flag. They all just watch it happen. No one tries to help, but sure, good guys win, let's go. So that night, there's a huge party after Capture the Flag, and Annabeth and Percy start chatting and flirting and getting that Percybeth on. Hades literally invades camp by rising through their campfire and starts firebombing the place because camp's safe, I guess. So Hades and Percy talk in front of the entire camp, and he lets him know that Percy's mother is alive, and if he brings Hades the lightning bolt, he'll give him his mother. Instead of getting the formal quest like they do in the show and the book, Percy, Annabeth, and Grover just kind of sneak off. But before they sneak off, they swing by Luke's place where he's playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 on like 6 monitors, and 3 of these screens are the same game, but like all different screens, so I'm not really sure what's going on there. So Luke gives them the flying shoes like he does in the show and the book, gives them a shield, and then this is wacky, gives them a map to Persephone's pearls. And this is basically the whole movie. Instead of trying to make their way west to go to the underworld, they're making their way around America to grab the pearls the nymph gives them in the ocean. And it's kind of like, why even make this huge change? It just completely changes the story, and I don't even know why they do it. But that's the objective of the movie, so let's keep it going. So the first pearl's at Medusa's shop, where they fight her, cut her head off, put it in their bag, and then grab the pearl. They put the head in the bag and the pearl, just so anyone's clear. Then they drive to Nashville with the truck they stole and fight a Hydra, where Percy uses his shoes to fly it and cut their heads off. Then they all grow back, but then Grover uses the Medusa's head to turn the Hydra into a giant statue. This whole Hydra, not even close to the book, that's okay. Let's just let it fly. So they then let the pearl and they head to the Lotus Casino. And the one thing I do really like about the movie Lotus Casino is it actually feels like they're there, they're party, they're having a great time there, and I love the montage. It's iconic for a reason, so let's just let it happen. But basically, while they're partying and having a good time and kind of completely forget about their quest, Poseidon talks to Percy in his mind. And he's like, wake up. You need to remember the quest. You need to remember the lightning bolt. And so he wakes up, alerts Annabeth and Grover. Then while they're escaping, he notices one of the pearls is on the roulette wheels, and he grabs the third and final pearl. Again, I'm going to bring this up again because it's kind of getting annoying at this point. Every time Grover sees any woman, it's like, why is he trying to bang them? It's such a prevalent part of the show, and they just keep bringing it up. I don't know why. Is it funny? I guess it's funny. Grover's horny. Haha. Just keep it in. Anyways, so they find the third pearl, and the map reveals to them that the last location they need is Hollywood, where the entrance to the underworld is. They go to the entrance, they meet Charon, bribe him, and they go and meet Persephone, who makes a comment that she's never had a satyr before.
I haven't had a satyr.
And then takes the kids to meet Hades. The one thing I did like is when we meet Hades, he's kind of in like a goofy kind of like 80s rock outfit. And Grover makes a comment about him, and then he reveals his godly form, and then reverts back to his human form. And it's cool because it just kind of reminds you, hey, this guy's a god. He can fuck you up if he wants to. And it's kind of, it does have that aura of power. It's not the same as it is in the book, but I think it's better than the show. The movies definitely make the gods feel like gods rather than feels like scary dudes or whatever you want to call it. This is also, I think this is a terrible change. In the book and the show, Hades wants his helm back. That's why the demons he sends never specifically say, where's the lightning bolt? They just say, where is it? Whereas in the movies, Hades wants to overthrow his brothers by taking the lightning bolt. There's never a mention of his helm being stolen, which is like he steals his mom to get the lightning bolt rather than stealing his mom to get the helm. So it's pretty similar, but it's like, I don't know, it felt like a weird thing to change that Hades wants to overthrow them. Whereas in the book, he's kind of a chill guy, even though he's really threatening. Hades reveals Percy's mom, and in a fit of absolute happiness, Percy throws down his shield he got given from Luke and goes to hug his mom. However, hidden in the shield, there's the lightning bolt. Immediately, Annabeth is like, Luke set us up, which is a huge change. Because in the book, Annabeth is like borderline in love with Luke, and she never even really accepts that Luke went to the dark side until like book 4 or 5. So this is a huge thing just to make, oh, Annabeth and Luke don't really have a relationship. But that's okay, because it's the lightning thief. We're not talking about the whole series. We'll just move right along from that. Hades sentences them to die because they stole a lightning bolt, and now he's happy he got it. But Persephone saves them. However, they only have 3 pearls. So they decide to leave Grover to fuck Persephone, I guess, which is a huge change. It's one of the whole points of the book and the show is that Percy has to sacrifice what he originally wanted most, which was his mom. He didn't really care about the god's feud or any of that. He just wanted to protect his mom. And then he learns he has to actually save the world by not saving his mom. But nope, let's just get rid of that. Let's scrap that whole entire super significant character development point, and we'll just leave it behind. Step on the pearls, and Luke is waiting for them at the top of the Empire State Building, and they have an epic fight on the rooftops of New York. While fighting, Luke just like uses the lightning bolt and tries to blow up a helicopter, I guess, because he's evil. I thought he just wanted to overthrow the gods, not just like literally kill random people, but that's okay. Also, why did the gods just let Percy and Luke fight right below their kingdom? They just have no problem with that, and they're using the lightning bolt to fight and they just don't do anything? Sure, you know what, it's fine, whatever. They're fighting. They end up on a rooftop, they're looking at each other. Percy summons a huge ball of water, kind of starts drowning Luke. Then he uses the water, summons a trident, and throws him into the West River, or whatever the river in. Hudson River? Maybe it's the Hudson River? He throws him into the Hudson River and drowns him. He doesn't really drown him because apparently Luke can swim. Percy takes the bolt up to Olympus, where all the gods are congregating, and they all are huge and godly, which is sweet. The one thing I really liked in the books is that each god's throne was unique. They all had their own styles of dressing, which they kind of just completely got rid of in the movie, which I guess is a small detail considering what the movie was focused on, but still, I liked it in the book. Like, Poseidon's wearing like Bermuda shirt, like a Hawaiian shirt, cargo pants, and his chair is like a fisherman's chair, and Zeus's is like this huge platinum chair. It's kind of like each god has their own personality. You can kind of see it in their chair. One thing I didn't like about the show and the movie is in the book, Percy walks through Olympus. It could have been like a 1-minute snippet, a little montage of Percy walking through Olympus, but neither the show or the movie had it because it kind of shows Olympus is this huge kingdom kind of floating in the clouds. There's satyrs, there's nymphs, there's minor gods, there's like the actual iconic Olympus, the Parthenon that you think of. And they just kind of completely got rid of that, which I wish they kept because it kind of just makes the Olympus feel a little more godlike instead of like, oh, it's a room with gods in it, I guess. Percy returns the bolt, asks Zeus to bring back Grover to the surface, even though I'm sure Grover's having a fun time banging Persephone, and he gets to meet his father. So Percy returns to Camp Half-Blood and sees Grover there. He's very happy. Ends with him and Annabeth doing some more training, and there's an end credit sequence of Gabe getting turned into stone. So if you're looking at the movie for how close it is to the books, obviously it's not completely close at all, minus the names pretty much. But if you're looking at it from just like, am I being entertained, not really relating to the books, it's okay. It's good. There's some good one-liners in it. There's some good action sequences. The budget was there, I guess, when they made the film, so that's good. I still don't know why they made Grover horny. I'm going to keep bringing it up because it happens so often in the show, but I guess that's funny. They also just removed Ares from the story, who was a huge part of the book, and they added a Hydra just because dramatic fighting. Sure. We're going to switch to some final thoughts. I know book people always say this, and it gets on my nerves, but I'm going to say it right now. The book is actually better than the show and the film. It's such a short story. It's only about 350 pages with a lot of space in between words. So you could probably read it into 8 to 10 hours, even if you're a slow reader. There's so many details that the movie and the show miss out on. And again, I'm not trying to be like one of those people that's like, well, in book 4, Hermione actually starts visiting with the house elves at Hogwarts, and like, shut up, no one cares. It's actually true in this. The movie completely missed the point of the books, I think, and the show rushed characters and scenes and fights and all that. I think they could have totally made time for it, they just choose not to, and I'm not really sure why. A great comparison of this is Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is a 1,056-page book. So Game of Thrones Season 1 was 10 episodes instead of 8, but they were the same length of time as The Lightning Thief. But there is more plots, there's more characters, and there is way more shit happening. Why they struggled to turn a 350-page children book into 8 episodes is beyond me. When talking about the movie versus the show, however, I do really appreciate that the show made an effort to at least be similar to the book. Yeah, they changed some things, but there's always kind of that room to change things. When you make a book, a movie, or a show, you can't keep it 100% of things. As I mentioned before, movies and shows can't communicate the things books can. You can't have those internal monologues without having a weird narration, and so I understand why some of that stuff was cut completely 100%, but there were some changes that were so unnecessary, like, again, the water park scene with Ares and Annabeth and Percy fighting for spiders versus Percy sacrificing himself for absolutely no reason. And the reason they cut Ares from the movie, no sense. For future seasons of the TV show, I just hope they slow it down and keep it nice. And for movies, I hope they never touch it again. Thank you so much for sticking around all this long. I really appreciate it. I really love making videos like this. It took such a long time to put together and actually write the script for this one, so I appreciate it if you're still here. A big help was the TikTok account, A Song of Danny, which had some very useful critiques of the show versus the book. And so I really appreciate them letting me use their content. Which version of Percy Jackson do you like best? Let me know down below. And if you enjoyed this, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. It does mean a lot. So thank you, and have a great day. Peace.
A message from the Government of Canada.